Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of our podcast, The Secret War on Cash, where we have been and will continue to discuss some of the changing things that are taking place in our financial markets and our economy. The good thing is there has been no shortage of that change, so there's plenty for us to talk about. I've got with me Chris Agelastos this morning. Chris, good morning. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Well, that's great to hear. We are literally halfway through January already, and it feels like Christmas was just yesterday.
Yeah.
Crazy. And if this keeps up, I think 2024 may fly by more quickly than 2023 did. And speaking of Christmas, I stumbled across this article the other day,
Mhm.
and I saw a term I had never seen before, the term phantom debt. I know
Yeah.
you've seen this article, Chris, but prior to seeing it, was that term familiar to you?
No, that's a new one on me.
It was new to me, and I've spent the majority of really my entire adult life working in some capacity of the financial markets. I've seen a lot of terms. And what's crazy, it's not only that it was a term I'd never seen before, but it actually makes perfect sense. It's like one of the best, most descriptive terms you could ask for.
Right.
For those of you tuning in, phantom debt is what they call the type of debt where you buy now and you pay later. So apparently, there's no real way of tracking this type of debt, or at least it's not reported. So there's no way of knowing exactly how much of it is out there. So it's no secret that Americans are drowning in debt right now. We've covered that a ton recently. Some of it due to excessive non-essential consumption, as per usual, but a growing amount of it has been due to people having to borrow just to put food on the table. So as we've covered in previous podcasts, how many analysts have, already been talking about how our debt bubble out there is getting ready to burst. And now we have this additional unknown amount of debt that's been heaped on top of all of it. Chris, what or when do you think is going to happen when we reach that ultimate? I guess when do you think it might happen, or what do you think might happen when we get to that ultimate breaking point?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people obviously are saying, 2024, because we expected problems in 2023, and we got a fair amount, but not all of them. But it's look, we already know that the debt crisis is a problem. We already know debt is a bad thing. But what we're finding
Right.
out now is that there's even more of it out there than what we'd expected. So to me, it's kind of like inflation, right? If the government says it's 10%, then it's probably really 15 or 20. So I guess we're sort of used to being lied to some extent. But what's interesting about this is it's sort of similar, not to date myself, but to a term we used to have, which was layaway when I was a kid. I know my mom would go and put some of our Christmas gifts on layaway months early, and then pay them off, and that wasn't reported to the credit bureaus and everything. So this is kind of like that, a more modern version. But what is scary about this is when I read that the number one item that is being purchased with this phantom debt is groceries. So I'm thinking, well, groceries, toys, cosmetics, I mean, other things. But, usually people would use layaway or this phantom debt for important things. And the fact that people are having to use it just to put food on their table, I think definitely sheds some light on how serious the current problem is. I mean, if you don't have money for that, and you're having to rob from Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, then I think we're in a lot of trouble. And obviously, I try to be glasses half full, and I hope that we can avoid a lot of these things. But at some point, you really have to look at everything that's going on, for what it is, and be realistic about it. And I think people need to protect themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not, to your point, it's not extravagant things. You're talking about
Right.
essentials, food
Right.
and things that we've covered as well, where there's also a very large portion of or percentage of people out there that are having to go into the retirement savings and savings in general to do the very same thing. And the concern there is, it's not something that I think is being properly addressed, let's say. So if there's a question as to whether or not this phantom debt is going to create a problem based on this next article showing it won't be creating a problem, it will only be adding to what is already a very serious existing one. Bankruptcies rose by 18% in 2023. That didn't go, they weren't an 18%, they rose by 18%
Right.
in 2023. But that's water over the dam at this point. What's now at hand is 2024. The expectation is that 2024 is going to be even worse, as you'll read in that article there. Chris, it seems like we've been watching our country financially unravel for months and months, years and years now even. And what strikes me with some of these recent reports coming out is that the number one of these reports that we're seeing, the number one issue, I think, is nothing short of crippling. And number two, the rapid rate by which these things are happening.
Yeah.
The current administration is not addressing these issues. It seems like the markets don't even acknowledge them. So how is this trajectory ever going to change?
Well, unfortunately, it's going to take some pain. What we're really waiting for, and what has been pushed off and off for the last several years, is some sort of major reset. Whether it's a major market crash to kind of pull all the fat out of the system.
And that term has been
because
used a lot, reset.
Yeah, and
Right.
and we've been kicking the can down the road for quite a while. Now in 2023, I think we've got some taste of it. With the bank failures. This was interesting. I think it was actually in this article, but I had read recently that of the top 7 bank failures, the 7 largest bank failures in our country, 3 of the top 7 were the 3 banks that failed in the spring of 2023. So and when I read that, what caught my attention was, those bank failures made the news. Obviously they were headlines, but people seemed to get over it within just a couple of months' time. They forgot about it, and those were 3 of the last 4 major bank failures in the last 10 years, and those were the biggest. So I think we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more bank failures. We need to see a big reset in the market to kind of get things back to normal. And that's what happens in a healthy economy. Unfortunately, what people don't like to talk about is the casualties. And that's really, the consumers and the people that are out there working typically paycheck to paycheck. And, it's hard to make enough money to have any to set aside. But once you do have enough set aside, you really need to focus on protecting it, especially the next few years. I think, you can, protect yourself with the tried and true, cash, real estate, precious metals. Certainly you can play around in the stock market with industries and things that you're comfortable with, and maybe then ride the next wave. Hopefully we can get through some of these problems over the next few years and then see another nice period of growth. That's how it usually happens, but we're still in the pain portion of it, and the real pain hasn't hit yet.
Right. And it's definitely creating its own energy or its own force out there in terms of the like the pain you're referring to, like people not being able to buy groceries, bankruptcies.
Right.
I mean, people are crying uncle, and as I mentioned a moment ago, unfortunately, there's really nothing that the administration or anybody has on Wall Street has come out, and there's no solution that's being offered. And then, as we spoke about in a previous podcast we did, the workforce is under attack right now with artificial intelligence and everything.
Mhm.
When you look at all those factors, it's very difficult for things to bounce back or recover because there's no substance there for them to recover from. So
Right.
all very interesting. And for those of you tuning in, if you'd like more information on this or other things that pertain to the economy, feel free and please do contact our office at 800-289-2646. If you'd like, you could visit us online at swissamerica.com. Calling in, you can speak to one of our representatives. I'd be happy to find out a little more about what you're looking for and get that to you at no cost. So thank you, Chris, for this. And for those of you tuning in, if you're not subscribed, please, please, please do so. Follow us on social media as well. And if there's comments, we'd love to hear from you. Chris, I'm sure we'll see you again. I say that every time, and it proves to be true.
I keep coming back.
That's fantastic. And there's plenty of stuff I'm sure that we're going to have to talk about here in the months as we roar into 2024. So again, I'm Dean Heskin. This has been Chris Agelastos. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.